I am your teacher, Mr. Pacitti, and this is my classroom here in Ontario, not Canada. So put away your mobile phones, put away your storm Kiras. Speaking of the storm, it blew away 25% of my roof last night. Oof. It's time to concentrate. It's time to study. This is Raw, and this is Graded. We're kicking things off with Seth Rollins and all of his little one-name buddies. They're all stood in the ring. Nice jacket, by the way, Seth. Where'd you get it? I'm sure you're watching. Leave a comment below. Seth says he is proud to stand here as your Monday Night Messiah by the t-shirt. And he's here to lead us all into the future. But first, he needs to talk about the past. So we get a quick recap on the Tron of the six-man elimination tag team match from last week. And Seth says, hey, even though my boys clearly won, Kevin Owens and the Viking Raiders are jerks because they ruined his #1 contendership opportunity later in the night. Seth says his patience is running thin and he will not be leaving this ring until his message is heard. Cue Kevin Owens music, out comes Big Kev. But Seth just won't stop talking, keeps going on about how he's the Messiah. He's not, he's a very naughty boy. Ha ha ha, couldn't resist. Kevin Owens starts running him down and says, I didn't come alone. Cue the Viking Raiders, out they come, but that's not it, because as all of the guys start scrapping, in runs Samoa Joe from behind, Kikina clutch, stunner to Buddy Murphy, and the big chunky boys stand tall, and a nice setup for tonight's main event. Solid B for this, all good stuff. Nice to see Samoa Joe back sooner rather than later. Very happy that those rumours about his suspension were indeed not true. And as the big boys all stand and pose in the ring, out comes the Raw Women's Champion, Becky Lynch, and she's here for a match with Asuka. And a very good match here indeed. Both women given plenty of time in this one. It lasted about 15 minutes. And even though we've seen it before, it still felt like a big deal. And a large part of that, not just the runtime of the match itself, but both women going all out. It was a pretty action-packed 15 minutes, a great show opener. There was interference and distractions from Kairi Sane, who was of course at ringside, but even without Kairi Sane, Asuka still managed to get the upper hand numerous times. She wasn't just relying on her tag team partner. There were disarmer attempts, Asuka lock attempts, near falls, there was scrapping on the apron, the hardest part of the ring. But as good as this match was, and it was a really, really good match, this is really all about what happened after the finish. So let's get there. So Becky catches Asuka, hits her with a rock bottom, 1, 2, 3, still Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch. But as Becky is celebrating, in runs Shayna Baszler. Finally, she attacks Becky from behind, ground and pound, locks her in the clutch for a bit, tosses her to the floor, and then she removes her gum shield and sinks her teeth into the back of Becky Lynch's neck. Now, I've seen some say that this was too hammy, that the fake blood was too obviously fake, but for me personally, I thought it was quite effective. Becky's selling of the wound was really fantastic as well, going, did that bitch bite me? I can't do the accent, but imagine that. And Shayna Baszler looking like the most evil woman in the world. She's literally one of the greatest heels in all of pro wrestling today. And even though, yeah, we've seen her on Raw before, if you want to call this her main roster call-up or whatever, what an impactful way to do so. She looked absolutely despicable. This gets an A-. The match would have been like a B+, but with all the post-match shenanigans, I thought it was brilliant. It's a definite A- from me. So you know what? It's wonderful to see that we're almost definitely going to get Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler at WrestleMania, and what a wonderful way to start building to that match. It's not often that we see this level of gore, for want of a better word, in WWE in the PG era, so this was unexpected and very refreshing indeed. Mojo Rawley and his offensive lineman Riddick Moss are out next. They get a jobber entrance, and their opponents tonight are the Street Profits. Before the match, the Street Profits start running down Mojo Rawley, saying all he's good for is riding the coattails of Rob Gronkowski, which is nonsense and slanderous because he rides my coattails. I'm kidding, Playboy. Anyway, this one lasts about 60 seconds before the Street Profits nail the cash out, pin Riddick Moss, and honestly, what's the point? This would have meant something had they established Riddick Moss and Mojo Rawley as an actual team, but they've lost everything thrown at them, so this was utterly, utterly meaningless. And worse still, Riddick Moss, after the bell rings, betrays Mojo Rawley, rolling him up and capturing the 24/7 title. Scum. This gets a D+. It was cool to see the Street Profits do something inside a wrestling ring for once, but it was all just so utterly pointless. Like, why are we supposed to care? Who is Riddick Moss? What are his motivations? Why was he paired with Mojo Rawley to begin with? Hey, maybe the whole point of this partnership was to get to a 24/7 title feud between Riddick Moss and Mojo Rawley, but I think you'll agree if that was the objective, well, it's a pretty stupid way of getting there, and this 3-week partnership has helped neither man. After this, we cut backstage to Becky Lynch, and she's refusing the assistance of medical personnel. They're all going, go to hospital, Becky, go to local medical facility, Becky, but she's going, no, I don't want to do it. And then she finally agrees, but she doesn't want to be driven to the local medical facility. She wants to drive herself, so she gets in the ambulance and hightails it out of there because driving is badass. Up next, MVP is back for a special edition of the VIP Lounge. His guest tonight is the man who single-handedly eliminated Brock Lesnar from the Men's Royal Rumble match. It's Drew McIntyre. MVP introduces Drew. He bigs him up. MVP acting a little bit heelish here, perhaps. We'll get to that in a second. Drew McIntyre, though, what a fantastic babyface. It's these little interactions with the crowd that work so well. He had them eating out of the palm of his hand last night. At one point, MVP mentioned WrestleMania, and Drew just goes, wait, you've said WrestleMania, I've got to do the thing. And he points at the sign. Big pop from me. So MVP continues healing it up a bit. He says that people are doubting Drew McIntyre, but hey, Drew McIntyre together with MVP, they can change the world. That's the dream team. MVP, big Drew Mac, and Drew is not having any of it. Drew's like, we? I don't think we won the Royal Rumble match now, did we, Montel? And to cut a long story short, Drew gets tired of MVP's BS and kicks his bloody head off with a claymore, sending MVP flying back into the sofas. It was a great sell, brilliant visual. This one gets a B+. So I guess the VIP lounge is now closed. When I saw this announced, I was like, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing MVP pop up once in a while for a VIP lounge segment because the guy's a good talker. He's pretty entertaining in that regard. I don't really want to see him wrestle that much anymore, but yeah, I could live with that. But I think this is probably it now. And what a way to go out, you know? Drew McIntyre week in, week out looks like a total badass. This week was no exception at all. And MVP probably had a lot of fun putting Drew over. That sell was class. Lot of fun. We all like a bit of fun. This one gets a B-. Up next, it's Angel Garza versus Gary Garber. Before the match starts, Zelina Vega starts bigging up Angel, and then Angel starts bigging up himself. But before he can get much further, outruns his cousin, Humberto Carrillo starts laying in the blows, hits a great spine buster, but then the referees and agents all separate them. Angel Garza stays in the ring, Humberto Carrillo escorted to the back. All the while he's going, I want him, and the crowd are loving this. They're going, let them go, but not yet. Hold it for next week. Anyway, the match does happen. I was expecting Angel Garza to just squash Cedric here. That fortunately didn't happen. Cedric making the most, maximizing his minutes for sure. It was all pretty fast paced, but it doesn't last very long at all. Angel Garza hitting the wing clipper and picking up the win. I quite like this. I could whinge about WWE not knowing what to do with Cedric Alexander, but I'm not going to because I find Angel Garza infinitely more interesting. And I think this feud between Angel and his cousin Humberto, I think it's going to do wonders for both guys. When Humberto was out there, the crowd were finally getting behind him. It's these displays of intensity which are really, really working, and I'm looking forward to the eventual match between those two. I think it's going to do wonders for both guys. I don't know who's going to come out on top, but my heart and my head, in fact, says Angel Garza, because I think he's just a little bit more interesting than Humberto Carrillo. But time will tell, and hopefully it does elevate both guys. So that segment gets a B-. And speaking of WWE not knowing what to do with people, please welcome Sarah Logan, who is here to call out Rhea Ripley. This is going to go well for you, pal. So out comes Ripley, but before the match starts, out comes Charlotte Flair. She stands at the top of the ramp, sarcastically applauding as Rhea Ripley just completely batters Sarah Logan in like 60 seconds. Rhea Ripley picking up the win. Rhea then grabs the mic and says, well, where's my answer, Charlotte? Will you face me at WrestleMania? But Charlotte does not give her an answer, instead saying, how do we even know that you're going to be champion after TakeOver? So there it is, a nice little plug for NXT TakeOver. That's a rarity. I don't know why WWE on their main roster program, they haven't been doing this for years. It's absolutely baffling, but I think that's changed. Judging by the number of little video packages, little commercials scattered through Raw last night, I think that's changing. So that's a good thing, and that makes NXT as a whole feel like a bigger deal as well. And speaking of big deals, Rhea Ripley looking fantastic. Obviously, even if she is battering somebody that we hardly ever see on TV, she still looked very good doing it. This gets a generous B-. Sure, the match itself was nothing special at all, but I do like the way that Rhea Ripley is being presented, and I think so do the crowd. They're slowly getting behind her as the weeks go on, and if she wins at TakeOver, which she definitely will, I think WrestleMania 36 is shaping up on paper, with regard to women's matches, to be the strongest ever. And I know that's not difficult because of the way that women have historically been presented in WWE, but man, it's really looking fantastic. Bobby Lashley versus Ricochet is up next, and an alright match here. The story being told, in fact, the story being hammered down our throats, is that even though Brock Lesnar is the biggest man, Ricochet still stands a chance. And that is on display here as Ricochet uses his speed, his quickness to outsmart and outmaneuver Bobby Lashley at various points throughout the match. And that's not to say that Bobby Lashley doesn't get some offense in. He certainly does. He hits some big power moves, but Ricochet, the valiant underdog, just keeps fighting back. He's defiant. Bloody hell, he's gonna beat Brock Lesnar, isn't he? Is he balls? Ricochet ends up kicking out of a huge spinebuster, nailing the 630 and picking up the win. Nobody for a single second thinks that Ricochet is going to beat Brock Lesnar, but God bless WWE for trying here. This one, it's another B-. Next up, it's time for Randy Orton to address his callous and malicious attack on One Edge a couple of weeks ago. He slowly walks to the ring, he slowly lifts the mic to his lips and says, what I did to Edge, it hurt me a lot more than it hurt him. But before he can continue, out comes Matt Hardy. And Matt is super pissed off. He says that he wants an explanation. He was giving you one, Matt. Let him talk. Anyway, Matt goes, despite the fact that Edge doinked my ex-girlfriend, we were like brothers. We did everything together. We roomed together. We stole the show together. We did it all together. Together. But Randy Orton is having absolutely none of it. It looks like he's going to talk again, but he then goes for an RKO. Matt manages to maneuver out of there, but Randy Orton ends up hitting one anyway, and then grabbing some chairs, concerto, and goodbye, Matt. This gets a B+ from me. Initially, I thought, Matt Hardy. Now, that is a curious choice for the man to defend Edge's honor, but actually through the scripting, I think they explained that really well, so it worked for me. Randy Orton continuing to look like a sadistic maniac, which is very much the role that he plays best, and WWE doing a very good job of keeping us invested in this storyline, even if Edge isn't on TV. And yeah, realistically, this is probably the last time that we're going to see Matt Hardy on our screens for a little while, and that makes me sad. I'm not going to sit here and speculate as to whether Matt Hardy is AEW bound or whatever. What I will say is that it's been frustrating to be a Matt Hardy fan for the past year and the way that he's been presented on WWE TV. So wherever Matt Hardy goes next, I hope he's truly happy. Genuinely, because the guy still has a huge amount to offer the pro wrestling industry. The guy is a legend, and he's deserved better than this last year for sure. So go and be happy, Matt. He's not watching. Maybe one version of Matt Hardy is watching. Hello. Aleister Black versus Akira Tozawa is up next. I cannot be bothered to talk about this at any length at all. We all know what's going to happen. Aleister Black kicks Akira Tozawa. He kicks him some more, kicks him in the face, Job done, Aleister Black wins. This gets a C-. I know the whole gimmick is him starting on the bottom rung of the ladder and then climbing his way up, but he already feels like he's above beating people like Akira Tozawa. No offense to you, Akira Tozawa, if a version of you is watching. So this is just doing nothing for me. I hope it leads somewhere, and I hope it leads somewhere sooner rather than later. After the match, he grabs a mic and says something like, "Oh, I'm an animal in a cage." And genuinely, I thought for a second that maybe it's been Aleister Black in Eric Rowan's cage all along. What if that's where this is going? I wouldn't put it past them, truly. In fact, where's Eric Rowan been? Before we get to the main event, one more segment to talk about. Becky Lynch is back. She's driven back from the local medical facility in her stolen ambulance, and she is pissed. She comes to the ring and says, "The doctors, they've numbed me up. They've made me forget about the pain." Which was pretty bloody quick if you think about it, including driving time and everything. Like, she was there for what, 45 minutes? Must have booper. So she calls out Shayna Baszler, says, "You better find me before I find you." And then she walks backstage to, I assume, steal some more vehicles without any legal consequences. Main event time, and it's that lovely big 8-man tag team match that we talked about earlier in the night. Seth Rollins and his followers versus the big chunky boys. And Seth starts running his mouth, but the big chunky boys attack him, and there's a big bloody brawl as we go to commercial. The babyfaces all take it in turn to beat up Buddy Murphy. Murphy, it's gonna take a while. And then the heels get the upper hand for a bit. Constant tags. Akon comes in, Razor comes in, then Seth comes in, all beating down on Eric. That sounds weird too. Eric. And it's largely competitive from here. More frequent tags. Everybody just having a chance to have a bit of fun. Kevin Owens comes in. He does some stuff. Samoa Joe comes in. Him and the Viking Raiders do a tremendous triple dive to the outside. Just 3 boulders, 800 pounds of mass flying through the ropes. You love to see it. And then from here, it all truly breaks down. It is pandemonium, brain. So the finish comes as Kevin Owens gets up top, dives to the outside, taking out pretty much everybody. Back in the ring, Samoa Joe locks in the Coquina clutch on Buddy Murphy. Murphy taps, but the ref's distracted. He doesn't see it, which allows Seth Rollins to hit the stomp on Samoa Joe. Buddy Murphy making the pin, and the Nasty Boys pick up the win. Damn you heels. This one gets a B+. It was just a lot of fun, wasn't it? There wasn't much in terms of storyline progression or anything like that, but that final 60 seconds especially, just complete chaos. It was great. And Samoa Joe, on his returning night, if you can call it that, even though he was the one who ate the pin, he still looks good because he got the visual submission on Murphy. You can't complain too much. Overall, a very enjoyable Raw. But what grade does it get? I'll tell you now. It's a B+. There you have it. Another solid episode of Raw, which I think is 4 or 5 weeks of largely enjoyable WWE 3-hour television. I can't believe I'm saying that. So well done, WWE. More importantly, probably well done, Paul Heyman. But it was just, it flew by, which never happens with Raw. It's been a good month, hasn't it? Please let this continue. If the worst thing about Raw is an Aleister Black squash match and 5 minutes of crap with Mojo Rawley and Riddick Moss, then that's fine with me. Speaking of Raw, my friend is a chef, right? And the other day I asked him, in your restaurant, do you ever serve steak raw? And he said, yeah, but it's rare. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. You can follow us on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.